Good morning, my friends. I hope this finds you all well. We're doing something just a little bit different this week. So rather than our regular sort of live Zoom call where we're talking to each other, I'm recording this on Friday evening. This is kind of an experiment, so do let us know how you get on with it. Do let Jude know, let myself know, because I think this might be a useful tool. One, to deal with a lot of the technical problems that we've we've both been having, both at my end and at your end, and might also help with the language issue that I know a lot of you have some difficulty understanding everything that I'm saying. So here we can pause the video as we like. So I will encourage you to um, wave at Jude and pause it at any point that you're not quite following what's happening. I'm not going to sort of give specific points, say now, pause the video now, but I think it should be sort of fairly clear to all of you, and you know, talk at this point. It's important that you communicate with each other. And next week I will be back doing the face-to-face. Next week is our final session on this course, which is absolutely incredible. I've been reading over so much of the things that you have sent so far, and I'm so impressed by the wonderful work that you guys have done and how much you are achieving in this very short time. So there are a few things left. I asked you guys to write a review for me, so I'm really looking forward to reading those. Hopefully you've all done your review by today. So get those to Jude, and Jude will send them over to me. That will be fantastic. And also, what we're going to be working on today is something a little bit different, but I think something that will be a lot of fun. We're going to be working on poetry today. Now, I know a few of you have been reading poetry, and a couple of you have asked questions about poetry. And as I am a poet, that is sort of my thing. It seemed foolish not to include some poetry here. So I'll just sort of talk a little bit about my experience with poetry before we get started. I have been writing poetry for years. I have published several books. The Songs of the River was my first sort of collection, which was not just my own, but a few other people put that together. I've written several books for children, including The Witches of Error Falls. I've written a poetry workbook. I've written 2 small pamphlets, The Darkness and the Dawn, and Butterfly. So these have all kind of done very well. I run a blog and a Facebook page called Harkershaw Poetry. If any of you guys are on Facebook, do find me there, which provides workshops for children and for adults, pretty much all ages, all over the world. People come and write poetry with me, which is really wonderful. And that's what I teach at university, at St Mary's University in London. I teach both reading poetry and writing poetry. And I care about it very much. I think it's absolutely wonderful. You know, poetry is when you find that thing that is so incredibly important to you and you condense it. You say it in its shortest form, its most powerful form, and you twist the words and make them beautiful. So it is both about saying something true and saying it in a very beautiful way. We've been looking at essays so far, and with essays, we want to make our writing good, we want to make it clear, but we aren't necessarily focusing on beauty. In a poem, we can be more elegant in our writing. We can be a little self-indulgent, use something that sounds particularly nice. And we can be obscure, which is when you aren't entirely clear about your meaning. You can be ambiguous. Leave some things open to interpretation for the reader, let the reader think a little bit. A poem is usually very short, and the reader doesn't just read it once, they read it a few times, they reflect on it, they come back to it. So what we are going to do, give you just a quick overview of what we're going to be doing in the whole session. I'm going to first of all just introduce you to one of my poems that we can use as our kind of, as a template, as something to come back to. I will do a little brainstorming exercise with you, because I think so far we've thought a lot about the questions that are obvious to us. When we're writing essays, we're asking ourselves, we're talking about the main events in our lives. We're talking about the issues we feel passionately about. Lots of things like this. But it's all very much, oh, what should I write an essay about? Okay, what are the obvious things? And that is absolutely fine. I think it's important that we write about the things that we care about. But sometimes it's a really good idea to push yourself to think differently. Go out of your comfort zone. Be creative. Find something that isn't the most obvious way, but perhaps a peculiar twisting of ideas, bringing two unusual ideas together. I am going to hopefully share the screen, and you will be able to see the poetry that I want you to have a little look at. There we are. That's the one I want to share. Okay. So this is a poem, this first poem I want to share with you. I will read it through. Actually, I think this would be a good point to, once we've read it, to pause and discuss amongst yourselves what you can kind of understand from it. Sort of before I give you a breakdown and analysis, just to sort of say, okay, just from your basic reading, just from that first read through, what are the impressions you get? Even if you don't know exactly what it's about, or you don't sort of have an absolute answer for it, are there any things that you notice about the poem? So just have a listen as I'm reading through it here. So it's called A Voice from the Grave. Sweet voice singing from the grave, bright and fresh and clear. A robin on a tombstone sang while I was sitting near, and gorgeous poured his rolling voice, the song of liquid gold, while I sat in the churchyard, my bare hands icy cold. I held a book upon my lap of lovely poetry. Across the page the old words danced, lithe and young and free. The poet and the songbird in the winter snow's first drift, from their grave lent me their song, and have shared with me their gifts. So take a little minute now, have a discussion. This would be a good point to pause, have a discussion. One, start with, what did you think of this poem? What can you identify in it? Any poetic elements at all? So we have lots of nice line breaks here, you'll see. The lines are quite short. Yeah, well, I will stop for now, and I will let you have a little look over that. Okay, hopefully you're back with me now, having had your discussion. I would be really interested to know if any of you have read poetry, and what you have read. I know certainly a couple of you have, because you've mentioned it either in the class or in your essays, which has been wonderful. I always love hearing about poetry. I'd be interested to know which poets you know. Percy Bysshe Shelley is my all-time favorite poet. He was an 18th century poet, and he's the poet that I'm focusing on in my PhD, my literature doctorate. I also love Robert Frost, Maya Angelou, Emily Dickinson. There are a great number of amazing poets out there. So if anyone's interested, let me know. And I have recommendations. I can send you things over. So let's look at this this poem, and I'll just talk you through essentially what I did when I was writing this, and how you can take the ideas that we're about to come up with and put them into your own poem. So I started this poem very simply with the idea of a bird singing in a graveyard. And I think graveyards are so often very sad places. They're places where we go to mourn people that we've lost. We go to grieve. We go to say goodbye. And they're often, certainly over here, they're often very natural places. There aren't many houses or buildings. It's just grass and plants and trees, and you get a lot of songbirds there, and that can be a really beautiful, comforting sound to hear a bird singing while you're in the midst of a very difficult feeling, a feeling of great sadness. And so I was thinking about that idea, and I wrote down a whole page. I got a page and I just wrote down lots of words all over this page in no particular order, not in sentences, just pouring out these ideas. So I thought about what the bird song sounds like, and I came up with this beautiful, like these lovely, rich sounds. I wanted to say how gorgeous it is. So we have the rolling voice because it flows. It keeps sort of it keeps moving almost as if it had momentum. I wanted to say how beautiful it was, so I called it a song of liquid gold. So the rolling voice, the song of liquid gold, is what we call a metaphor. It's when it's not literally a song of gold. How could it be a song of gold? Songs aren't gold, but it is blending the features of something else to the thing that you're talking about to give us an image in our minds. Probably what else you will notice. So the poem here is just, it begins with me sitting in the graveyard by myself listening to this song, and there's a contrast in the beauty of the bird. If we look at this, the second stanza here, we call it stanzas, where we have a break in between the grouped lines of verse, kind of like paragraphs but for poetry. And in this stanza, I've contrasted indeed the beauty and the gorgeousness, the goldenness of this voice with my cold hands, and the kind of the loneliness and the sadness that is kind of implied there, and this feeling of sadness and emptiness. So we start with hearing the bird song, and then we transition into, like, what else am I doing? Where am I in this churchyard? Okay, I'm sitting there reading a book. And I'm reading a book of beautiful poetry. Now, this was kind of based on a real moment in my life, and I was sitting in a graveyard and I was reading Percy Shelley because he is, as I said, my favorite poet. And it was this sort of wonderful moment of reading these incredibly beautiful lines of poetry and thinking, wow, the guy who wrote this, that was 200 years ago. That is so long ago. And yet these words are here and they're speaking to me despite the passing centuries. And that was an amazing feeling. And so this bird that is perched on a tombstone is singing out this beautiful song. And I kind of felt that there was a spirit of the dead. And I'm not a religious person, and I'm not kind of subscribing to any particular spirituality there. But many cultures, many faiths have an idea of our dead coming back or being with us in some kind of spirit sense. And I felt that this bird song in the churchyard could be the voice of a departed loved one. And so on one hand, we had the bird singing its song, and on the other, we have the poet, and the poet has been dead for hundreds of years. And yet I had some message from both of these, and that felt really extraordinary. Other things you will notice in this poem, this is a rhyming poem, so not all lines have to rhyme. Very important. You do not have to do rhyming. You can write a poem that is simply a nice little story with lots of line breaks, like we have here. But if you want to try rhyming, I think that would be really, really cool. Many poems do have rhyme. So the rhyme is simply the ends of the words sounding the same. So if we have Song of Liquid Gold, sounds like icy cold. And there are many, many different types of poetry. You can write with as many lines as you like, but there are lots of structures. And here I've used a very specific structure. So you'll see each of my stanzas, each of these little paragraphs, has 4 lines. And it's the second and the fourth line that rhyme. So in every one of these stanzas. And this becomes really nice to the reader because you know when to expect the rhyme. If you listen to kind of lots of songs, you'll find they have similar putting the rhyme in at the same point. So we have clear and near, gold and cold, poetry and free, drift and gift. So that is a very basic introduction to a poem. It's quite a simple poem here. I'm not doing anything very, very complicated, very, very fancy. But I think it's a nice little one to start us out. Okay. What I think we shall do now, I'm going to get you guys started on some ideas. Oh, excuse me. I'm all twisted up today. So I want to get you guys started on some ideas. And as I said before, I really want to try and push you beyond the obvious associations and into some innovative and creative thinking. Maybe you already have an idea of what you would like to write a poem about, and if you're sitting there going, oh, I would like to write a poem about this one moment, then you can feel free to do that. As ever, with poetry, it's so much about following your inspiration, finding the thing you care about, and I encourage you to write how you feel, write what you want to write. I think that will be really, really wonderful. But if you're sitting there just absolutely drawing a blank, follow me. I will guide you to some ideas. So our first of all, I'm just going to give you one word. We're each going to take one word. I have written here some suggested words. So we have here late, impossible, clouds, fair, coat, water. They're just a bunch of words. There is no theme, there is no connection. I want you to pick one word. You can pick one from this list, or you can pick one word of your own. You know, you can really, I would just say keep it a really general word if you're picking your own word. So something really broad, so it can be a noun, so a naming word, so it can be tree, window, winter, food, sun, you know, anything that's really, really broad. If you wanted to kind of, I've got some slightly more ambiguous words here, like late and impossible. I think those are more interesting. They challenge you if you pick something like fair. What is fair? I mean, there are so many different ways you can interpret that word. You can think of a fun fair, which is, you know, like a circus or something. You can think of, is this fair or is it not fair? Is it unfair? Is something being unjust? Loads and loads of ideas. So at this point, just pick one fairly arbitrarily. Take a new page in your notebook and write that word down. nice and clear. I'm going to be typing mine, but I also encourage you to just fill this page that you're going to write with ideas all over the place. They don't have to be in full sentences. This page is not the page that you have to give to me, you have to show to me. This page is not the kind of, this must be perfect. This is our experimentation time. Last week we were talking about editing. It's something kind of similar. You know, you don't just have your first draft, you edit it, you correct an essay and make it better. This is going even further. This is before we even start writing. We're getting our ideas down. So I'm going to take one of these words too, and I haven't done these before, so hopefully this will go fairly well. I think I'm going to go with clouds. I like clouds, the word. Pick your own word, write it down. One of these, a different one, whatever you want. Okay, trusting that we all now have a word. Remember, pause the video when you need to, put your hand up if you're not following, just ask, and we'll, Jude and Mary will be able to help you out, I'm sure. So, starting with this idea, clouds, I want you to write down, first of all your obvious associations with that word. It's important that we get the obvious stuff out first. So these are just the first things, you know, maybe you want to actually take a moment to close your eyes and say, okay, what do I think about this topic? I might do a couple actually, so I can show you some slightly different ways. So we will take maybe just 2 minutes, I think, to write down all the ideas that we can think of. Just really, really obvious ones, very direct. So I'm going to do clouds, I'm going to do grey, I'm going to do rain, I'm going to do cold. All of these words, I think of clouds. Okay, what do clouds look like? What do I associate with them? If you're doing something like impossible, okay, what is impossible? Well, maybe you're looking for synonyms, other words that mean the same thing, or maybe you're thinking of things that are impossible, like, I know, giants, or, you know, me becoming an Olympic skater, you know. These are things that are impossible. Whatever you want, just get these ideas down just in single words, short phrases, no need for sentences here. So 2 minutes, put the timer on. I'll let you know when we're done. Okay, we're going to take a quick pause there. So I've just poured out some very obvious words about clouds. They are grey, they are white, they're fluffy. We tend to think of clouds as being fluffy. They're huge, soft, they're in the sky. Nimbus and stratus are both types of clouds. I did geography in high school, and that's one of the few things I remember from it. Rain and snow obviously come from clouds. Shapes, and I just kind of jotted that down as a word, but I think of people often look at the clouds and try to see shapes within them. So that seemed interesting. Weather, they're part of weather. High, they're high up. Smoke, they're kind of like smoke. I put smoke and fog down there because they're both very cloud-like. Okay, so those are the obvious ideas. The next step is to start getting a little bit less obvious. So I want you to think, first of all, what does this mean to you? So write down anything that is personal. If you have a personal association, it might not make any sense to anyone else, but that's fine. For instance, this is a perhaps peculiar one, but when I think of cloud, I think of my friend. I used to have a friend called David MacLeod, which is a Scots name, which is actually MacLeod. It's actually how it is spelled, just typed it up there. But his kind of nickname was Cloud because it sounds like cloud, MacLeod. So I think of my friend David MacLeod because, oh yeah, we used to call him Cloud. So that's my own personal association. So I'm just going to pop that in. I might want to kind of mention a couple of other things. That what are my memories of David? Well, we used to kind of live in Edinburgh together. We used to walk up Calton Hill. Maybe I'm going to jot some things down like that. So think of the personal, any personal connotations, and don't feel you're not going to have to explain them to anyone at all. But just anything that you associate with this word. And then the next step, which I'm going to give you these two together because I think this kind of creativeness can just blur around and we can move between them, is to think bigger. Think bigger. This is what we're doing here. We are expanding our mindsets. So what are clouds a part of? Well, clouds are a part of weather systems. And then I'm going to sort of say, okay, well, are clouds good things? Are they bad things? Well, they're often, certainly over here, people tend to be kind of sadder on cloudy days, which are most days, to be honest. People often talk about clouds as being a bad thing. Oh, the clouds come in. We have kind of sayings like this about, oh, the rain's coming. We're all going to have to stay inside. We're all a little bit miserable. So maybe I'm going to think about that kind of depressive quality of clouds. But I might also say, well, actually, we absolutely need clouds because we need rain. We need rain to make plants grow, to get food, all of the good things that we need, absolutely. So I might start to look at something like that, something that is both a curse and a blessing. You have a very different climate over there. You might have a very different attitude to something like clouds. I would imagine probably so. In Scotland, it's very rare to have a day without a cloud in it. You know, that's how we live. If you're thinking about clouds, start also to think of, okay, think of analogies. So what is a cloud? If we think of what is the cloud as part of the weather system, how else can we see things that have that same place? So what do I mean? If we think of clouds as necessary, but unliked, I mean, that could then open up what else is necessary but unliked. Well, absolutely loads of things. Speeding restrictions on cars, taxes are unliked, but kind of necessary for the way we live. All kinds of little things that we do. You know, if it's like brushing your teeth, you know, getting your hair cut, all of these things, lots of these things that we hate, particularly when you're a little kid. I remember absolutely hating having to have my hair brushed when I was a child. But it was absolutely necessary. So just sort of think what things might be similar. What things could you kind of bounce from clouds onto? So I'm going to give you a bit longer this time. I will give you guys let's take a full 5 minutes. And I want you to really push yourselves here. Try and come up with as many things as possible. Be as unusual as possible. Just open it all up. Every idea, however strange it might be, listen to it and use it. I will keep making my notes here on the screen so you can kind of have a look up and yeah, we'll give it a go. Okay, 5 minutes. You can be writing in full sentences or just in little notes. I would say keep it as short as you can. We're not actually writing poetry yet, we're just coming up with ideas. Thought to just kind of give you guys a little bit of some other ideas. I've just popped down a few notes for late as well. They're just seeing that's a completely different sort of concept, lateness. So talked about being on time, clocks, oversleeping, things being important, things being deadlines. What are you late for? But then I've also written deceased because we often talk about the late person. Think about missing out. If you were late for something, you weren't there, you missed it. Maybe you're hurrying, you're anxious, you're worried that you're not going to be there on time. I just wrote a missed train, and I thought that sort of seemed like quite a nice prompt, that maybe you were late and you missed a train or a bus or something that was supposed to be taking you somewhere. Might be a nice prompt. So carry on with what you're doing. I just wanted to keep opening up ideas and hoping that these will help you to find your own ideas. Okay, so that is our time up. That is a good 5 minutes that we have had on coming up with ideas, and hopefully you will have a whole page of ideas now, even if they're mostly really unconnected. That is fine. We have so much here that we're doing, and it's gonna look great. So what I want you to do now is to highlight the things that are important. So just take some time to look back over what you've written and think, what could I make a poem out of? What could I make a little story out of? And you will be starting to have some things that you like. For instance, I really am liking this kind of idea that clouds, that they can be sheltering or they can be burdensome, and this kind of difficult relationship that we as people have with clouds of, do we want them or do we not want them? So I think that's the thing that I found most interesting so far. So I'm intrigued to know what you guys have found in yours. So we'll take a couple of minutes. Now, you're not writing new ideas, but taking the ideas you have and starting to think about what could be a little story. So essentially what we're aiming to get is a maybe one sentence, maybe two sentences that summarize the point that you want to make. For instance, if the poem, the sentence that I might have come up with for this poem, the Voice from the Grave poem, could be something just like, in a graveyard, I'm just going to pop it down here, in a graveyard, I was reading poetry by a dead poet, and I heard a bird singing while it sat on a tombstone. I enjoyed the voice of poet and bird. So that is not a poetic sentence, not a pretty sentence, but that is the essential kernel of what happens in that poem. I was in a graveyard, I was reading poetry by a dead poet. I heard a bird singing while it sat on a tombstone, and I enjoyed the voices of poet and bird. So that's the absolute basic. That would be, so this is what we're going to come up with now for the poem that you are about to write. So I might have something about clouds being necessary but unliked. I might do something like that. I'm going to give everyone a couple minutes just to think over what might be a really good idea for a poem. Okay, hopefully we've all got some ideas there, and again, if you need more time, just give a wave to the guys there and they'll be able to pause the video. I'll give you guys a bit more time. The next stage is taking these ideas that we have and making them into a poem. And that is easier said than done, my friends. What we're going to do first, and I'm torn between how much to really structure you guys carefully for each and every little tiny bit, and how much to just let you guys run free. I think I kind of want to let you run free and see what happens. So what we're going to do is take these ideas that we have and just start to write the poem. What I think we want to keep focused on is having short lines. So just keep taking new lines here. It's nice to end each poem on, end each line on a nice word. So here I've ended on the word grave rather than the word from. For instance, from isn't particularly exciting of a word. It's a preposition, we don't need that. But grave and clear and sang and near, these are the lines that end each line here. They don't need to be full sentences. That's very important. So for instance, I have some punctuation at the end of some of them. So you'll see there's a comma at the end of grave. But if you maybe look down at this third stanza section, I held a book upon my lap of lovely poetry. I've just let that line run on. You can absolutely do that. You want to just keep the lines all kind of the same length, and just sort of take a new line on what sounds nice. We're going to be writing our first draft here. We're going to be pouring out all of our ideas. One thing that I think is a good place to start is to think how your poem will develop. So, for instance, my line here, although clouds can be thought of as bringing coldness and sadness, they are actually important life sources. That's going to be the idea behind my poem. So I'm going to start it with this very common image that clouds bring coldness and sadness. And again, this might be a cultural thing. I don't know how you guys would relate to something like clouds. But over here we have, as I said, lots of sayings. I wrote down every cloud has a silver lining. This kind of idea that clouds bring bad news, but hey, there's a little line, there's a good side to that. So I'm going to set up that image of clouds as negative things. And then as I talk about all the good things they do, I'm going to try and bring the reader around to understanding my point of view. Now, there is no right and wrong with poetry. That is the beautiful thing about poetry. There are ways to make it more engaging, ways to make it sound different, to sound nice. But really, you can do what you want here. So if you want to write it with yourself in the poem, do that. Wonderful. But if you don't, if you just want to write about clouds or fairs or whatever it is that you're writing about, just write about those. They can be very, very separate. I have written my first poem here is in 4 stanzas, 4 little paragraphs. You might want to think of doing that too. But again, this is your poem. Do what you want. First thing, we're just going to write. I would say try and keep it within 12 lines. If you're going over that, it's probably more than we can easily manage in a session like this. You might want to keep it really short, maybe keep it to, 12 lines, we've got 16 lines here, haven't we? Maybe just keep it to 8 lines. That might be a nice short, manageable little poem. Entirely up to you. This is your choice. You can do 4-line stanzas. Each stanza has 4 lines and a rhyme in 2 and 4. Fantastic. Or don't do rhymes, don't do stanzas, just do 1 long poem. That also is great. This is your choice. So I think we're going to have a decent chunk of time this time. I think I'm going to give you guys a full 15 minutes here to just sit and write your poem and see kind of what you can come up with. Okay, off we go. Here's a quick hint if you're doing a rhyming poem, which, as I said, you don't have to do a rhyming poem. That would be absolutely fine. But if you do want to do a rhyming poem, a nice little thing is to take a word that you know you want to use, so something like rain here, and then just make a list. Sometimes rhymes come to your mind really quickly and you just know, oh yeah, I want to say rain and I want to say pain. Those are the two words that I want to go. But maybe if you say rain and pain are the ones that come to mind, well, I don't really want to put any pain into this poem. That's not what I want to say. Oh, don't know why that happened. So we're going to have rain. I'm just going to write a list of rhyming words. Think of everything. Again, pain. Lane, same. So these are kind of half rhymes, but I'm getting them in there. So sometimes that exercise is enough to just kind of go, oh, okay. And then if I was to use one of these words, what would the sentence be? How would I do that? So if you want to do rhyme, do that. If you don't, that's absolutely fine. Okay, that is coming up for time, so let's take a little break there. Well done for getting whatever you have down, and if you have really struggled with this task, do not worry, that is completely understandable. If you've not written poetry before, your first bit of writing poetry can be really, really difficult. It's a journey. I'm hoping it's a journey that will be fun for a lot of you. A poem can be a very impressive way of putting yourself out there. And I'm really excited to see what you guys have written. But if it's been a struggle, do not worry. That's okay. You may just not be in a poetic mind frame right now, and that's fine. So here is what I have written. I actually went through 2 poems here. I started writing this one. And I was using the same structure that I was using with the previous poem of having nice rolling rhythm and having a rhyme on the 2nd and 4th line of each stanza. But I kind of didn't like it, actually. Quite quickly, I just felt this isn't the right structure for this poem. My mother does not like the clouds. She hates the pouring rain. When the storms roll round her house, she locks herself away. But at the first sweet splash of rain, I run quickly out of doors to drink the flowing water in and see it dropping from the boughs. It wasn't quite speaking to me, so I decided to just try something different. We're all about trial and error here. This is making mistakes, making different drafts of things, and finding the best that we can do. So I went on and I tried this one instead. Across the windy moors, the clouds come sweeping in. They hide the pale blue morning sky in gentle sheets of grey. I walked out across the heather beneath the shelter of their silver. I saw the stream was thinning out. I saw the bracken withered, and I waited for those thunderclouds to unleash their sacred water. Pour upon me, morning clouds, bring life that we so need. Morning turned to afternoon, and the water bringers broke, and the dry earth drank with gratitude, and the river rushed with strength once more. And happy, though soaked to the bone, I turned and went back home. So that is the first draft of my poem. I'm going to invite you guys now, particularly since I'm not there, to pause the video and have a discussion between you about this poem. What do you think I could do better in this poem? What bits do you like? What bits do you not like? We very rarely get to critique work. I've been encouraging you guys to be reading each other's work and providing really positive, really helpful feedback as much as possible. And that can be difficult. It can be difficult hearing from somebody else what they think of your work. Particularly if maybe they don't quite understand it, maybe they don't quite see what you're doing. That's a real shame when that happens. And I think we've all had, well, I've certainly had a lot of bad feedback at times. I've had feedback from people that hasn't been the right thing. But feedback can be great if you find the right person. And it's one of the great skills is to be able to give people feedback well. So I've been putting you into sort of, I know you've been putting yourselves into pairings and into small groups. I would encourage you to find a pairing, a small group, somebody that you can work with and someone that you can trust. Don't just kind of get whoever you're sitting next to, whoever you know. If it's someone in this class, great. If it's somebody else that you know, but show them your work. Say, what do you think about this? And explain to them what you wanted to do, and listen to their feedback. Sometimes you will get feedback that is kind of dismissive, and you're allowed to dismiss that. You're allowed to say, okay, you didn't want like this, you didn't want this. But if you get many people saying, if you get somebody saying, I don't understand this, think about why. If somebody says they don't like it, then it's not for them. But if they don't understand it, or if they think there's something that could be improved, listen, weigh it up, say maybe or maybe not. So pause the video, discuss this. I'm not even here to hear you, so you can be mean. Please don't be mean. But I would love to hear on your feedback when I see you guys again. Okay, so presuming you've had a little chat, I will highlight some of the things that I think I want to change in this. So there are a couple of small mistakes that I've made just while writing. So I need they because I'm talking about clouds and I wrote the instead of they, so I need to add that in there. I have changed tense in these first few lines. And that's really easy to do in poems, and you must be careful not to do it. So the clouds come sweeping in. They hie to the sky. That's present tense. But then it's I walked, and suddenly we're in past tense. So it doesn't really matter which one we do. I think I've written most of it in past tense. So I'm just going to go and change those first few verbs. So do check the verbs in your own poem and see. So all I'm going to do is they hid the pale blue morning sky, and then I'm going to change the clouds come to the clouds came. Great. The one thing I don't like about this poem is that there's lots of repetition. So I've repeated I saw and I saw here twice. And then here I have started lots of words with lots of lines with and, most of them with and the. Now you can do repetition in poetry. You want to do it on purpose. And so I think 2 actually isn't quite enough for here. Oh, there's a tiny spider on me. I saw the stream was thinning out. I saw the bracken withered. And so I'm just going to make a note from it myself to say I saw something else. I saw the stream was withering out. I saw the bracken withered. I saw the something, something, something. That'll be nice. We often kind of talk about rule of 3, which is that when we're making lists, when we're being persuasive, 3 seems to be a really kind of positive number that makes people listen. So rule of 3, I will go for 3 there. I need to add more punctuation here. And we'll need a full stop there after there's silver. You can be quite creative with punctuation in poems. You don't have to be as strict as you would be in an essay or in a regular paragraph. I'm going to delete the word I there because I think we've had I saw, and waited. So then I've put the I in there already. I think this bit isn't necessary anymore. I'm kind of just going to delete those lines. I don't think they're particularly good. Sometimes it's difficult deleting a line, but oh, I actually wrote that line. Well, it's okay. We're just going to get rid of it. Okay, so I have loads of ands here. I don't like that. I don't think that looks good. I don't think it sounds good. So I'm going to change this. Instead of morning turned to afternoon and the water bringers broke, I'm going to put as at the beginning. So as morning turned to afternoon, and then put a comma, the water bringers broke. I could do as, or I could do once, or I could do when. Anything like that would be grand there. You can do capital letters at the beginning of lines, or you cannot. Again, that's a choice. Some poems have a capital at the beginning of every line, even if it's not the beginning of the sentence. Doesn't matter what you do, just pick one and stick to it. I've been a little bit in and out here. So I need to put a capital B on beneath, and I'm going to put a capital T on the. And I'm going to keep my 3 ands in that line, in that one there actually. But I'm going to make these lists. So I have the I saw in the first stanza. I'm going to copy that line again. So notice if you're doing anything interesting in one stanza, maybe like repetition or a rhyme, can you echo it in the next stanza? Can you copy the structure there? That's a really nice effect to do. So I'm going to add another and there, and I haven't written these lines yet. I'll take a little bit more time to write those. So the stream sitting out, the bracken withered, I saw, and then I have the dry earth drank, and the river rushed. So I could actually copy those things there. So I shall put the bracken blossomed. Attach the bracken withered. So then I have these two sets of 3, and they're about the same things, and I'm even going to put them in the same order as well. So I saw the dry soil crack. I saw the bracken withered. The dry soil had cracked, sorry. I saw the bracken withered. I saw the stream was thinning out. So I'm actually going to replace those entirely. Now, obviously, this is slightly easier when you're doing it on a laptop because you can copy and paste. But you can do this on paper as well. You're drawing lines, little arrows here, put this line up here, and then you rewrite it in a good draft. It takes a little bit of time, but it is so worth it. Okay, and so the last thing I'm going to do is starting all of these lines with a capital letter. Comma, and put all those, so to the bone, I turned and went back home. Okay, so that is my poem. I am pretty pleased with that poem for half an hour's work, whatever it's been. I'm probably going to work on it a little bit more. Maybe not even right now, but I might even come back to this tomorrow. I think with any kind of writing, but particularly with poetry, but I think even with essays as well, come back to it on a different day. Don't just look at it that one day, because you have all the ideas in your head on that first day, and so you sort of know what it's trying to do, you know what it's meant to do, and you can miss the errors that are just sitting there staring at you. So I'm now going to give you guys some time to edit your poem, but basically we are now at the end of the session, so what I shall just do is bid you a farewell and then let you guys decide between yourselves how long you want to spend editing, if you want to be editing it in a group or if you want to go away and edit them. If you can get your reviews and your poems once they're done to Jude to send to me, that would be absolutely fantastic. I'll let you discuss with Jude when that is best for you and for him. And for next week, we will have our final session. A reminder that I'm asking everyone to have sent me 5 written works by the end of this course. Now, a lot of you are in a very good place for that. A lot of you have already sent me quite a few, but there's a few more outstanding. So I think I've only gotten 1 from a couple of you guys. I'm sure you know who you are. But just double check, have you done 5 pieces? Have you gotten the most out of this course that you could? So send as much to me as you have done. My novel is due in by the end of today. It's probably going to be the end of tomorrow. But after that, I should have a little bit of time to go through and edit them. I hope most of you have gotten the feedback that I sent to Jude. If any of you wanted to write to me via email or via letter, in a kind of that is very, very much welcomed, and Jude can pass on my details. That would be great. But yes, get those to me. I am looking forward to reading more of your wonderful works. Any questions, let me know, let Jude know, and I will see you all next week for our very last session. Okay, take care, stay safe. I'll see you soon.